She said I was suspicious, but dumb. So I built a case file like I would for fraud, waited until her salon was full of clients, and exposed everything in high definition. Before we begin, please subscribe, and I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? I never thought the ugliest truth I'd ever uncover would come from the backseat of my own damn SUV. 18 years in the insurance game teaches you to spot the lies people tell themselves. The widow who swears her husband never smoked while standing next to ashtrays full of Marlboros. The restaurant owner claiming electrical fire when the gas cans are still in his trunk. I've built my career on finding what people desperately want to hide. But coming home from another mind-numbing day of investigating staged car accidents and inflated medical claims, I never expected to turn that same microscope on my own life. The Ford Explorer hit me with its usual cocktail of stale coffee and whatever vanilla air freshener Tina had sprayed last week. But there was something else riding underneath. Something that made my gut clench before my brain caught up. I'd been married long enough to know when the familiar suddenly felt foreign. Reaching between the cup holder and side wall for what looked like crumpled fast food wrapper, my fingers closed around something that definitely wasn't trash. The latex felt warm, still damp. My brain went through its trained sequence of denial, the same pattern I'd watched in 1,000 fraudulent claimants. Couldn't be. No way. Not Tina. But there it was, wrapped in a paper towel like evidence at a crime scene, because that's exactly what it had become. The nausea hit in waves as yesterday's memory surfaced clear as courtroom testimony. Tina borrowing the SUV. Her excuse sliding out smooth as silk. Just picking up supplies for the salon, honey. That new texturizing spray and argan oil. I sat frozen in the garage, staring at the knotted paper towel in my palm. 18 years of marriage, 1 kid. A mortgage we'd been chipping away at like good, boring suburban soldiers. Nightly routines that had worn grooves in our lives so deep we could navigate them blind. Then the investigator in me kicked in, cold and clinical. This is what I do for a living. I spot lies for a living. Time to do my job at home. Walking into our kitchen felt like entering a deposition. Tina stood at the stove, humming along to some pop song on the radio. Glass of red wine catching the overhead light. She looked radiant. That post-shower glow, lavender conditioner still perfuming the air around her, mixing with garlic from whatever sauce she was stirring. Normal. Picture-perfect normal. "How was work?" she asked, not even turning around. "Fine. Found something weird in the Explorer." The wooden spoon never stopped moving. "Oh yeah? Like what?" I dropped the bomb with the same casual tone I used to present evidence in court. "Used condom." The pause lasted maybe 2 seconds. Too small for most people to catch, but not for someone trained to read micro-expressions like they were neon signs. "You. Must be Cody. Teenagers, right?" Her laugh carried just a note too high, her tone a shade too playful. Later that night, I knocked on my son's bedroom door. Cody looked up from his calculus homework, pencil still moving across the page, completely absorbed in whatever equation was giving him trouble. "Hey, bud, you used the SUV recently?" "Why would I? I've got my Civic." He didn't even look up, just kept scribbling numbers with the focused intensity of someone genuinely puzzled by the question. I watched for the tells I'd memorized from his childhood. The nose rub when he'd broken something, the eye twitch when he hadn't done his chores, the way he'd break eye contact when caught in even the smallest lie. Nothing. The kid was telling the truth. Back in my home office, I opened the obsessive little notebook I kept for tax purposes. Every gas fill-up, every oil change, every mile driven meticulously logged. The numbers didn't lie. They never did. Last fill-up before yesterday, odometer reading, gas level, date, time. After Tina's supply run, 38 extra miles, not the 24 it should have been for a round trip to the beauty warehouse. And that coffee shop she'd mentioned stopping at? I'd driven past it just last week. Closed for 3 months. For lease sign faded by weather and time. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the evidence spread across my desk like case files. Tina's transformation over the past 2 years flashed through my mind like a highlight reel. From the girl I'd met cutting hair at Super Snips to the owner of Bliss and Bloom. Local business success story. Featured in the town newsletter twice, she'd been coming home later, always with explanations that sounded reasonable. Extra clients, inventory checks, networking events. And somewhere along the way, she'd stopped wearing her wedding ring to work, claiming it snagged on the hair dryers. That night, I dreamed I was standing in a burning building, holding a picture of Tina smiling at someone else. I woke in a cold sweat, but the investigator in me was fully awake now. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was evidence collection. I pulled up Google Maps on my laptop and started searching. 20 minutes later, I found it. Amberlight Inn, tucked behind an old strip mall like a guilty secret. The website advertised discreet back parking available. The truth was out there. I just had to follow the trail. If your gut screams and you're trained to follow paper trails for a living, you follow it all the way to hell. The next day during my lunch break, I drove out to Old Quarry Road. The area looked like small-town America's forgotten corner, a collection of rundown auto shops, discount liquor stores, and motels that had seen better decades. The kind of place where cash transactions happened without questions and business cards were optional. One place caught my attention immediately: Dalton Auto Works. The signage was hand-painted, probably sometime in the 90s, with oil stains decorating the concrete like abstract art. A rusted-out Jeep sat on the lot like a monument to mechanical failure, surrounded by tire stacks and metal barrels that had seen too many winters. I pushed through the glass door, setting off a bell that had probably been announcing customers since Carter was president. The smell hit me first: motor oil, cigarettes, and something else I couldn't quite place. Sweat, maybe. Testosterone. The scent of men who worked with their hands and took pride in getting dirty. The walls were covered with Polaroid photos. Some showed satisfied customers standing next to their freshly repaired vehicles. Others were more suggestive women in tight tank tops leaning over engine blocks, poses that had nothing to do with automotive repair and everything to do with the male fantasy of the sexy mechanic. Help you with something. The voice belonged to a man who emerged from under the hood of a pickup truck, like he was surfacing from underwater. Rex Dalton, according to the name stitched on his Navy work shirt. Mid-40s, military-style haircut going gray at the temples, arms that looked like they could bench press my Ford without breaking a sweat. The kind of guy who probably had USMC tattooed somewhere and used it to justify every bad decision he'd made since discharge. His smile was all teeth and confidence, the kind that said he'd never met a married woman he couldn't charm, or a husband he couldn't intimidate. "Just looking for someone to handle an oil change," I said, playing the role of clueless suburban dad. "My wife mentioned you helped her out recently. Tina Whitaker?" That smile widened into something that made my jaw clench. "Oh yeah, Tina. Real sweetheart. Good energy, you know. The kind of woman who knows how to appreciate quality service." Every word was loaded with innuendo, delivered with the casual arrogance of a man who thought he was untouchable. He leaned against the workbench, arms crossed, watching me with the amused expression of someone who knew exactly what game we were playing. "She said her brakes were squeaky," Rex continued, that grin never faltering. "Ended up staying longer than expected. You know how it is. Once you get under the hood, sometimes you find more than you bargained for." I nodded along, taking mental notes of every syllable, every loaded glance, every cocky gesture. This was the man who'd been in my SUV with my wife. This grease-stained Romeo who talked about women like they were engines to be tuned up. That evening, I made a trip to the electronics store. The GPS tracker was smaller than I'd expected, about the size of a matchbox, magnetic, with a battery life that promised weeks of surveillance. I paired it with a commercial tracking app on my phone and drove home through the suburban streets that suddenly felt like foreign territory. Late that night, while Tina slept beside me, I slipped out to the garage and crawled under the Explorer's rear bumper, the tracker attached with a satisfying click behind the spare tire mount. I named it in the app with bitter humor: The Truth. Over the next 5 days, I watched Tina's routine unfold on my phone screen like a GPS confession. The pattern was so consistent it might have been programmed. 12:50 p.m., beauty warehouse. Legitimate stop probably. 1:15 p.m., Amber Light Inn. Parked for anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes. 2:40 p.m., Dalton Auto Works. 20-minute stops, like clockwork. 3:30 p.m., home to her devoted, clueless husband. I drove past each location during my own lunch breaks, confirming what the satellite images already told me. The motel was exactly what I'd expected. A collection of brown doors facing a parking lot designed for discretion. Dalton's garage sat behind it like an afterthought, close enough for convenient transitions between venues. The GPS screenshots accumulated in a folder on my laptop like evidence photographs. Each timestamp was another nail in the coffin of my marriage, another piece of documentation that would serve me well when lawyers got involved. But it was the nights that really got to me. Tina would come home unusually upbeat, bringing takeout from restaurants we hadn't tried before, wearing perfume she claimed was just something new I picked up. She'd hum in the shower, check her phone constantly, smile at messages I wasn't allowed to see. One night, I pretended to sleep while she giggled softly at her screen in the darkness beside me. Through half-closed eyes, I watched her thumbs dance across the keyboard, typing responses to someone who was definitely not me. Can't stop thinking about earlier. I heard her whisper into the phone, "You're so bad." The words weren't meant for the man who'd shared her bed for 18 years, who'd held her hand through morning sickness and midnight feedings, who'd co-signed loans and split mortgage payments, and built a life that apparently meant nothing when measured against whatever Rex Dalton was offering in the back room of his garage. I waited until she fell asleep, then accessed our shared iCloud account from my laptop. Marriage had its privileges, including shared digital storage that she'd apparently forgotten about. Text messages, even deleted ones, lived forever in the cloud, waiting for someone who knew where to look. The recovery tool I downloaded was designed for parents monitoring their teenagers. Instead, I used it to monitor my wife's betrayal in real time. The messages between Tina and Rex painted a picture that would have been laughable if it weren't destroying my life. "Can't wait for tomorrow. Bring that red thing. Want to see if I can make your whole garage shake." And the one that hit like a physical blow. "He's clueless. Still tracking tax receipts while I'm riding you like a Harley." I saved every screenshot, organized them by date, cross-referenced them with GPS timestamps. The investigator in me was building an airtight case while the husband was quietly dying inside. The financial breadcrumbs were there too, once I knew where to look. Tina's credit card statements revealed charges at the motel filed under business services, ATM withdrawals near Rex's garage, a $200 Venmo transfer labeled consultation that had nothing to do with automotive repair. Late at night, staring at the evidence spread across my desk, I sometimes wondered if I'd pushed her away. If my practical, steady, boring reliability had driven her into the arms of a man who probably called her baby and meant it, who made her feel dangerous and desired instead of safe and settled. But then I'd remember 18 years of showing up, of being faithful, of choosing her every single day even when excitement had faded into routine. Safe wasn't boring. Safe was loyal. Safe was building something that lasted instead of chasing whatever felt good in the moment. Those doubts never lasted long. I wasn't the one who'd chosen to blow up our life. I was just the one documenting the explosion. The GPS pinged again that night, showing the SUV parked at Amber Light Inn for the 4th time that week. But this time, I'd prepared something special. Earlier that day, I'd created a fake Google account and left a review on the motel's page, complete with a photo I'd taken from across the street. The image showed Tina's blue Honda parked next to Rex's lifted pickup truck, license plates clearly visible, timestamp reading 11:47 p.m. To anyone who knew what to look for, it told the whole story in a single frame. I uploaded it with a 5-star review. "Great place for discreet meetings. Very private. Highly recommend for anyone looking to conduct business away from prying eyes." The review went live at midnight. By morning, it had been viewed 16 times. This wasn't about catching her anymore. It was about controlling the narrative before it consumed me. The alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., same as always, but everything else had changed. While Tina slept beside me, her phone charging on the nightstand like a silent witness to her double life, I slipped out of bed and padded to my home office. The GPS logs from the night before showed another visit to Amberlight Inn. The third this week, following the same predictable pattern that had become as routine as my morning coffee. I opened the hidden folder on my laptop labeled Tina_lies_final and reviewed my collection. Screenshots of GPS maps with timestamps, photos of her car in the motel lot, images of Rex's truck parked beside it like they were announcing their affair to anyone who cared to look. There were recovered text messages, credit card statements, a Google Doc timeline I'd titled Sequence of Deception that read like a prosecutor's opening statement. The investigator in me had done his job. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, court-ready. But as I sat there in the blue glow of my laptop screen, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't about gathering proof anymore. This was about choosing how the story would end. Emotion makes messy decisions. Documentation builds leverage. I'd spent 18 years being the practical one, the steady one, the man who measured twice and cut once. Now that same methodical approach was about to serve a very different purpose. Divorce was always an option. The clean, civilized route that lawyers preferred and counselors recommended. File the papers, split the assets, arrange custody, move on with wounded dignity intact. Too easy, too predictable, too much like letting her write the ending after she'd already destroyed the middle. I didn't want to just leave. I wanted to be the author of the consequences. This was going to be a high-stakes insurance fraud case, and I was going to treat it exactly like one. The goal wasn't revenge, it was exposure, humiliation, and legal advantage, in that order. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Raymond Greer. Ray worked for the state's Department of Business Regulation, and I'd helped him crack a luxury car fraud ring 2 years ago, the kind of favor that came with interest, compounded over time. Ray, it's Mark Whitaker. I've got a garage in Bridger Falls operating dirty. Owner's name is Rex Dalton. Ray's voice was gravelly with sleep, but he perked up when I mentioned potential violations. State regulators lived for this stuff. The chance to flex regulatory muscle and generate headline-worthy busts that made their bosses look competent. What kind of dirty we talking about? Expired business license, cash-only jobs with no paperwork, possible tax violations. I can send you documentation. Within an hour, I'd forwarded Ray screenshots of Dalton Auto Works' expired license, Google reviews from customers bragging about no paperwork deals, and tax violation records I'd pulled from the public database. Ray promised an unannounced inspection within the week. 1 target acquired, 1 remaining. I spent the morning converting my evidence into a presentation. The software was the same program I used for insurance fraud cases, complete with transition effects and background music options. I organized the files into folders with clinical precision. Photos, physical evidence, screenshots, conversations, audio extraction, timeline, discrepancies. The final product was 37 slides of pure documentation, set to a soundtrack that would make every revelation hit like a hammer blow. I saved it with a title that made me smile for the first time in weeks. Our Journey Raw. The opportunity presented itself 3 days later, gift-wrapped in Tina's renewed enthusiasm for her business. She announced that Bliss & Bloom would be hosting its annual client appreciation event in 3 weeks. 30-plus regular clients, free wine and appetizers, live hair demonstrations, the works. This could bring in a whole new tier of clientele, she gushed over dinner, eyes bright with the kind of excitement I hadn't seen from her in years. Unless you counted the excitement she showed when texting Rex, which was apparently a daily occurrence now. That sounds amazing, I said, cutting my steak with deliberate precision. You know what? Let me help. I could bring my office projector, maybe put together a slideshow. Trip down memory lane kind of thing. Her face lit up like Christmas morning. This was the supportive husband she remembered, the one who showed up and helped make things happen. the one who'd apparently moved past his weird jealousy phase and was ready to celebrate her success. That would be incredible. We could show everyone how far Bliss and Bloom has come. Absolutely, I agreed, raising my wine glass in a toast. Let's show them how far you've come. The irony tasted better than the Cabernet. Over the next week, new messages appeared in the iCloud backup like evidence falling from heaven. Rex and Tina had gotten careless, or maybe they'd gotten comfortable. Either way, their digital trail was painting a picture that would make a courtroom artist weep. Rex: "You ever think about just leaving him?" Tina: "Not yet. Need to see how much I'd lose." Rex: "With the salon doing so good, we could start over easy." Tina: "Let me handle it my way. He's suspicious but dumb. He's never going to see this coming." That last message hit different than the others. It wasn't just about sex anymore, or excitement, or whatever middle-aged fantasy Rex was selling. This was strategic, calculated. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning her exit strategy with the methodical precision of a woman who'd learned to think like a business owner. The realization should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it felt like validation. I wasn't the paranoid husband anymore. I was the mark in a con game, and now I knew exactly what game we were playing. I printed out every message, organized them chronologically, cross-referenced them with GPS data and financial records. The woman who called me suspicious but dumb had forgotten that I built cases for a living, that I'd spent 2 decades turning scattered evidence into compelling narratives that convinced juries and judges. She was about to learn the difference between being suspicious and being thorough. I scheduled a consultation with David Brennan, the divorce attorney who'd handled my colleague's case last year. Brennan had a reputation for being expensive and effective, the kind of lawyer who charged $600 an hour and earned every penny. "How do I protect my assets?" I asked, spreading my documentation across his mahogany conference table like I was presenting an insurance settlement. Brennan reviewed my evidence with the detached professionalism of a man who'd seen every flavor of marital destruction. "This is comprehensive," he said finally. "Adultery, financial deception, documented planning to abandon the marriage. In this state, you're looking at potentially more than 50% of marital assets. What about the salon? Business built during the marriage, using marital funds. You're entitled to half its value. More, if you can prove she was hiding income." I pulled out Tina's financial records, the ones she'd been keeping separate from our joint accounts. Unreported cash transactions, clients paying under the table, income that never made it to our tax filings. The same kind of financial smoke and mirrors that landed people in front of federal judges. "She's been treating the salon like her personal piggy bank," I said. "Cash transactions, no receipts, clients paying off the books. I've got documentation going back 18 months. Brennan's smile was predatory. "Then you're not just looking at a divorce settlement. You're looking at financial fraud, tax evasion, and breach of fiduciary duty to the marital estate." Walking out of his office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Control. Not the desperate, clawing control of a man trying to save his marriage, but the cold, calculated control of someone who'd figured out how to win a game he never wanted to play. That night, Tina's phone buzzed against the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. The name on the screen made my stomach clench. Rex Dalton, followed by a little red heart emoji. The preview message was visible without unlocking the phone. "Let's get that camera angle right next time." I stared at those words until the screen went dark, then I walked back to my office and opened my presentation file. 37 slides of evidence, organized with the precision of a federal prosecutor and the fury of a betrayed husband. In 3 weeks, Tina would get her appreciation event. She'd get her moment in the spotlight, surrounded by clients and friends, and the life she'd built while systematically destroying the one we'd shared. She just wouldn't get the ending she was expecting. If betrayal had a sound, it would be the silence of 30 women watching your marriage disintegrate on a projector screen. The morning of the event, Tina was radiant. She'd chosen a red wrap dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, spent an hour perfecting her hair into loose waves that caught the light like spun gold, applied makeup with the precision of a woman who knew she'd be photographed. Standing in our bedroom mirror, she looked like the successful businesswoman she'd become, confident, polished, untouchable. "You look beautiful," I said, and meant it. She did. She looked like the woman I'd fallen in love with. Back when her ambitions were dreams we shared instead of weapons she used against me. "Thank you." She kissed my cheek, leaving a trace of lipstick that smelled like vanilla and betrayal. "I'm so nervous. This could really put Bliss and Bloom on the map." "It's going to be memorable," I promised, loading my laptop and projector case into the truck. The salon had been transformed into something that belonged in a magazine spread. Gold foil balloons clustered in corners like metallic flowers, white tablecloths covered folding tables loaded with cheese platters and fruit arrangements. Wine glasses caught the afternoon light filtering through the front windows. A jazz playlist hummed softly in the background, the kind of sophisticated ambiance that said, "successful local business," in every carefully chosen detail. I arrived early, claiming I needed time to set up the technical equipment. The truth was, I wanted to watch the guests arrive, to see the faces of the women who would witness what was about to unfold. There was something fitting about an audience for this kind of revelation. Tina had built her reputation on being seen, on being admired, on crafting an image of success and happiness. It seemed appropriate that her downfall should be equally public. The guest list read like a who's who of Bridger Falls' female social hierarchy. Jenna Carter arrived first, 70-something real estate mogul who'd been Tina's client since the Super Snips days. Paula Brooks swept in wearing designer jeans and carrying a purse that cost more than most people's rent. Lifestyle blogger with 15,000 Instagram followers, and the kind of influence that could make or break local businesses with a single post. Mrs. Hargrove shuffled in with her walker, the elderly widow who'd trusted Tina with her granddaughter's prom hair and never missed a chance to brag about her girl Tina to anyone who'd listen. They gathered around the refreshment tables, wine glasses in hand, voices rising in the comfortable chatter of women who'd known each other for decades. Compliments flowed like the Chardonnay praise for the salon's decor, admiration for Tina's success story, gossip about whose daughter was getting married and whose husband had bought a new boat he couldn't afford. Tina moved through the crowd like she was hosting a political fundraiser, touching arms, laughing at jokes, accepting congratulations with the gracious humility of someone who'd worked hard for everything she'd achieved. To everyone in that room, she was the American dream in a red-wrapped dress, small-town girl made good through determination and talent. They had no idea they were about to witness the American nightmare. At exactly 3 p.m., Tina clinked a wine glass with her wedding ring, the one she claimed not to wear at work anymore, but had put on for appearances tonight. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Ladies, before we get to the raffle and demonstrations, I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for your support over the years. You've watched Bliss and Bloom grow from a crazy dream into something I never imagined possible." Her voice carried the practiced warmth of someone comfortable with public speaking. "My wonderful husband put together a little video tribute to share with everyone." Applause rippled through the room. Someone called out, "How sweet!" And I heard Mrs. Hargrove tell her neighbor, "That marks a good man." If they only knew. Tina handed me the microphone with a smile that could have powered the projector. "Take it away, honey." "Thanks, everyone. Just a little trip down memory lane to show how far we've all come together." I clicked to the first slide. Wedding photo. Tina in white lace, me in a rented tux that was slightly too big, both of us grinning like we'd won the lottery. Soft awes filled the room. Slide 2. Baby Cody with strained carrots in his hair, tiny fists grabbing at the camera. Laughter now. The kind of warm recognition that comes from shared experiences of motherhood and family chaos. Slide 3. Grand opening of Bliss and Bloom. Ribbon-cutting ceremony with the mayor. Tina beaming next to her brand-new salon chair. Someone called out, "Look how young you were!" And the room dissolved into good-natured teasing about hairspray trends from 5 years ago. This was the warm-up, the setup. The moment when everyone relaxed and settled in for a pleasant stroll through happy memories. Slide 4 changed everything. GPS tracker map. Bright red lines crisscrossing Bridger Falls like arteries of deception. 3 locations highlighted: Beauty Supply Warehouse, Amberlight Inn, Dalton Auto Works. Timestamps showing dates and duration of visits. The chatter died like someone had unplugged the sound system. Slide 5. Photo of Tina's Honda in the motel parking lot. License plate clearly visible. Timestamp reading Tuesday, October 8th, 1:23 p.m. The silence was so complete I could hear the jazz music still playing softly in the background, suddenly inappropriate and obscene. Slide 6. Receipt from Dalton Auto Works. Brake inspection, $50 cash. Dated the same day as the motel visit. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I couldn't tell who. Slide 7. Screenshot of a text message conversation. Tina's number clearly visible at the top. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bring the red thing." The response, "You know I will, baby. Gonna make you scream again." Gasps now. Actual gasps. Wine glasses forgotten in suddenly nerveless fingers. "Turn it off." Tina's voice cut through the silence like broken glass. "Turn it off right now." But I was just getting started. Slide 8. Audio file. I clicked play, and Rex Dalton's voice filled the salon like a confession booth recording. "Tina's the easiest payday I've had in years. Woman gives me cash for work I ain't even doing, if you know what I mean. Gives me a lot more than cash, too. I'll ride this train till her husband finds out, if he ever does." Guy seems dumber than a box of rocks. Laughter in the background. Another male voice. "You're a savage, man." Rex again. "What can I say? Some women just need a real man to remind them what they're missing at home." The recording ended. In the silence that followed, I could hear Tina's breathing, sharp and ragged like she'd been running. Slide 9. Rex's criminal background check. Assault charges. Restraining orders from 2 ex-wives. Business license violations going back 7 years. "Turn it off!" Tina lunged for the projector. I stepped smoothly to the side, blocking her path without breaking eye contact with the audience. Slide 10. Financial records. Credit card charges at the Amberlight Inn filed under Business Services. ATM withdrawals near the garage. Venmo payments labeled Consultation. Slide 11. The final montage. Side-by-side screenshots of text messages and GPS timestamps, proving beyond any reasonable doubt that my wife of 18 years had been conducting a systematic affair while lying to my face about picking up hair product. Paula Brooks had her phone out, recording. Mrs. Hargrove was clutching her neighbor's arm like she might fall over. Jenna Carter stood frozen with her wine glass halfway to her lips, staring at the screen like she was watching a car accident in slow motion. "Is this real?" Jenna finally whispered. "Tina, tell me this isn't real." Tina's face had gone from flushed to pale to something that looked like she might be sick on her own salon floor. "You psychopath," she hissed at me. "You absolute psychopath." I took the microphone back with the same calm I'd used to present findings to a jury. "This isn't about haircuts, ladies. This is about honesty. This is about what happens when someone thinks they're smarter than the evidence." I looked directly at Tina, whose red dress suddenly looked like a target. "What you do in secret eventually shows in the light. Full disclosure, same thing I do at work every day. Today, I brought it home." The room erupted. Voices overlapping, wine glasses being set down too hard, chairs scraping against the floor as women stood to get a better look at the projector screen or to distance themselves from the wreckage of what had been, 5 minutes earlier, a pleasant social gathering. "I trusted her with my granddaughter's hair," Mrs. Hargrove said to no one in particular. "This is going on the blog," Paula announced, still recording. "Tina," Jenna tried again, "you need to explain this." But Tina had retreated to the back office, the sound of her sobbing barely audible over the chaos she'd left behind. Half the guests were already heading for the door, uncomfortable with the intimate destruction they'd witnessed. The other half stood transfixed, watching the slideshow loop back to the beginning, unable to look away from the car crash of someone else's marriage. I packed up the projector with the methodical precision of a man finishing a job well done. Around me, 18 years of marriage dissolved into gossip and speculation, and the kind of small-town scandal that would fuel conversations for months. As I walked toward the door, carrying my laptop case like a briefcase full of justice, I heard Paula Brooks dictating to her phone, "The fall of Bliss and Bloom, inside the scandal that rocked Bridger Falls." I stepped outside into the crisp October air, got into my truck, and drove home to pack my things. The war was over. Time to see who'd won. The thing about setting a fire is, you don't get to decide what else burns with it. By midnight, Paula Brooks had her blog post live. I found it while sitting in the Motel 6 across town, laptop balanced on my knees, takeout Chinese getting cold on the nightstand. The title made me wince. Sleeping with Grease, the fall of Bliss and Bloom. She'd embedded everything photos of my slideshow projected on the salon wall. Audio clips of Rex's voice bragging about his conquest. GPS screenshots with the license plates tactfully blurred, but still recognizable to anyone who knew what to look for. The comment section was already lighting up like a Christmas tree, neighbors and strangers alike, weighing in on the destruction of my marriage with the gleeful cruelty that only small-town scandal could inspire. "Always knew something was off about her," wrote someone calling themselves Truth Teller 47. "Feel so bad for the husband," posted Bridger Falls mom. 18 years and she throws it away for that grease monkey. The local Facebook groups had exploded overnight. Screenshots of Paula's blog were being shared faster than I could track them. Bliss and Bloom's Google rating had dropped from 4.3 stars to 2.5, with new reviews pouring in every few minutes. "Would not trust this woman with my hair or my husband," read one particularly brutal assessment. By Monday morning, the real damage was becoming clear. I'd driven past the salon on my way to work. Old habits die hard, and I was curious to see the aftermath of my nuclear option. The parking lot that usually bustled with morning appointments was nearly empty. Through the front windows, I could see Tina sitting alone at the reception desk, staring at her phone like it might hold answers to questions she was afraid to ask. My own phone had been buzzing nonstop since Saturday night. 17 missed calls from Tina, voice messages that ranged from sobbing apologies to screaming accusations to threats about what her lawyer would do to me. I saved them all, labeled chronologically self-incrimination_01 through self-incrimination_17. The message I finally listened to came at 3 a.m. Sunday morning, Tina's voice slurred with wine and exhaustion. "You wanted to ruin me, Mark. Congratulations. You got your revenge. Hope it makes you feel like a big man, destroying everything I worked for. Hope you can sleep at night knowing what you did to me." The irony was that I was sleeping better than I had in months. For the first time since finding that condom, I felt like I was in control of my own story. By Tuesday, Tina's world had collapsed with the efficiency of a controlled demolition. 60% of her regular clients had canceled their standing appointments. 3 of her 4 stylists had called in sick. 2 never returned, jumping ship for the new salon that had opened across town, taking their client books with them like lifeboats from a sinking ship. Someone, I suspected Mrs. Hargrove's granddaughter, who had a flair for the dramatic, stood outside Bliss and Bloom Tuesday afternoon with a handwritten sign that read, "Trash hair from a trash heart." The photo made it onto Paula's Instagram story within an hour, complete with crying laughing emojis and the hashtag #BridgerFallsDrama. But Tina's destruction was only half the story. Rex Dalton's empire was crumbling even faster. Raymond Greer's surprise inspection had hit Dalton Auto Works like a federal raid. Ray called me Thursday morning, voice crackling with the satisfaction of a bureaucrat who'd found exactly what he was looking for. "Your tip was golden, Mark. Expired business license, no posted labor compliance notices, 3 unregistered vehicles on the property, and get this. He was running cash, only jobs out of a garage that wasn't zoned for commercial repair. What's the damage? Cease and desist order, effective immediately. Landlord's issued eviction notice for violation of lease terms. Oh, and we found the mayor's wife's Subaru getting worked on without any paperwork. She's not happy." By Friday, the local newspaper had picked up the story. "Garage King exposed as grease-stained fraud" ran above the fold, complete with a photo of Rex standing next to his "closed by order of the state" sign. looking like a man who'd just realized that sleeping with other men's wives came with consequences he hadn't considered. The divorce papers were filed the following Monday. David Brennan had crafted them like a legal masterpiece. Adultery, financial dishonesty, breach of fiduciary duty to the marital estate, and irreconcilable differences. The evidence package was 3 inches thick, organized with the precision of a federal prosecution. I was asking for sole physical custody of Cody, half the value of Bliss and Bloom, and exclusive rights to our house. Given the circumstances, Brennan was confident we'd get everything we asked for and more. Financial infidelity is just as damaging as sexual infidelity in the eyes of the court, he explained during our strategy session. She was hiding income, conducting business transactions without your knowledge, and planning to abandon the marriage while continuing to benefit from marital assets. That's textbook fraud. The conversation with Cody happened that weekend. He'd been staying at his girlfriend's house since the salon incident, avoiding the radioactive fallout of his parents' mutual destruction. When he finally came by my motel room, he looked like a kid who'd aged 5 years in 5 days. "Why didn't you just leave quietly?" he asked, slumping into the room's single chair like the weight of the question was too much to bear upright. I set down my coffee and really looked at my son. 18 years old, graduating in 3 months, planning to study engineering at State. Smart enough to understand what had happened, old enough to see the bigger picture, but still young enough to believe that adults should handle their problems with dignity and restraint. Because I was never going to win quietly, Cody. And this wasn't about winning. It was about truth. But did you have to destroy her like that? The question hit harder than I'd expected. I didn't destroy her. I disclosed her. There's a difference. She destroyed herself. I just made sure people could see it clearly. He was quiet for a long moment, processing the distinction between revelation and revenge. Finally, he nodded. Not agreement, exactly, but understanding. It's just brutal, you know? Yeah, it is. Meanwhile, Tina was attempting damage control with all the desperation of someone trying to stop a hemorrhage with Band-Aids. She'd posted a public apology on the salon's Facebook page. Vague, non-specific, full of language about personal hardships and difficult times, without actually acknowledging what she'd done or who she'd hurt. I want to apologize to my clients and community for recent events that have caused confusion and concern. Bliss and Bloom has always been about making women feel beautiful and confident, and I'm committed to rebuilding the trust that has been damaged during this difficult personal time. The comments section was brutal. Former clients expressing their disappointment, neighbors sharing their opinions about adultery and business ethics, strangers from 3 towns over weighing in with judgments about people they'd never met. The post had generated more engagement than any promotion she'd ever run, but for all the wrong reasons. She tried offering free services, a month of complimentary blowouts for anyone willing to give her another chance. Only 2 people took her up on it, and one of them was her elderly neighbor who probably didn't have internet access and had missed the entire scandal. The new salon across town, opened by her former stylists Jessica and Maria, was already booking solid. They'd named it Fresh Start Hair Studio, with what I had to admire was perfect timing and absolutely zero subtlety. Word was they were booked 3 weeks out and considering hiring additional staff. Bliss and Bloom, meanwhile, was operating at maybe 20% capacity. Tina had been forced to cut her hours, let go her receptionist, and take on jobs she hadn't done in years, sweeping floors, washing towels, answering phones that rarely rang. I found myself in a strange liminal space, not quite divorced, not quite married, living in a motel room that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and watching my former life implode from a distance. I still went to work every day, investigating other people's lies and fraudulent claims with the same methodical precision I'd applied to my own domestic crisis. My colleagues knew something had happened. Small towns don't keep secrets, and my situation had become the kind of gossip that spread through office break rooms like wildfire. But they were professional enough not to ask direct questions, settling instead for meaningful looks and carefully worded offers of support. "If you need anything, Mark," my supervisor had said, "you know where to find us." What I needed was time. Time to process the fact that I'd deliberately destroyed my wife's reputation and business in front of 30 witnesses. Time to figure out if the satisfaction I felt was justice or just revenge dressed up in better clothes. Time to decide whether the man who'd created that slideshow was someone I could live with long term. Late Thursday night, I was at the grocery store. One of those midnight runs for essentials when you can't sleep and need something to do with your hands. I was comparing pasta sauce prices, trying to remember if Cody preferred marinara or meat sauce for our weekend dinners, when I heard a familiar voice 2 aisles over. He didn't just leave me, he annihilated me. Tina's voice, pitched with the kind of desperate intensity that comes from repeating the same conversation to anyone who'll listen. I abandoned my cart and moved closer, curiosity overriding common sense. The whole thing was calculated, she was saying to someone I couldn't see. He planned it for weeks. Made me look like some kind of monster in front of everyone I know. Well, came a second voice. Jenna Carter, I realized. What did you expect would happen? I expected him to be an adult about it, to talk to me privately, to handle it like a civilized human being instead of some kind of... Instead of what, Tina? The silence stretched long enough that I risked peering around the end cap. Tina stood in the wine aisle, still beautiful, even with dark circles under her eyes, and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Jenna faced her with arms crossed, the body language of someone who'd heard enough excuses. You cheated on your husband, Jenna continued. For months. With that garage owner who's now being investigated for fraud. You lied to Mark, you lied to your clients, you lied to all of us. What exactly did you think was going to happen when he found out? I backed away before I could hear Tina's response, but I carried Jenna's words with me as I checked out and drove back to the motel. What exactly did you think was going to happen? The question followed me into sleep and greeted me the next morning. What did any of us think was going to happen? That 18 years of marriage could end quietly? That betrayal could be handled with dignity and mutual respect? That there was a civilized way to discover your wife was planning to leave you for a man who bragged about using her for money and sex? Maybe there had been. Maybe I could have confronted her privately, filed for divorce quietly, handled the whole thing with the kind of mature restraint that kept everyone's dignity intact. But that would have let her control the narrative. That would have allowed her to paint herself as the victim of an unhappy marriage, the successful businesswoman trapped with a boring husband who couldn't appreciate her ambition. That would have let Rex Dalton continue operating his shabby little empire while bragging to his buddies about how easy it was to steal another man's wife. Instead, I'd chosen transparency, full disclosure. The same standard I applied to insurance fraud applied to domestic fraud with equal precision and considerably more personal investment. The question wasn't whether it was right or wrong. The question was whether I could live with the choice I'd made. Lying in that motel bed, listening to the ice machine cycle in the hallway and the distant hum of late-night traffic, I realized I could live with it just fine. You can't rebuild on ruins until you're done sifting through the ashes. The confrontation happened by accident, the way most final conversations do. I was standing in the grocery store cereal aisle, debating between Cheerios and granola for my new bachelor apartment, when Tina rounded the corner with her cart and stopped dead. She looked smaller somehow, diminished in a way that had nothing to do with physical size. The confident businesswoman who'd hosted that appreciation event was gone, replaced by someone who looked like she'd been sleeping poorly and eating less. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that would have horrified her professional standards 6 months ago. Mark. Her voice carried 18 years of history and 6 months of destruction. Tina. I kept my tone neutral, the way I'd learned to speak to hostile witnesses. For a moment, we just stood there among the breakfast cereals, two people who'd shared a bed and raised a child and built a life that now existed only in legal documents and bitter memories. Are you happy now? She finally asked. Did you get what you wanted? The question was loaded with the kind of pain that makes people say things they'll regret, but I found I didn't have the energy for another fight. I never wanted any of this, Tina. I wanted my wife to stop sleeping with other men. I wanted honesty. I wanted our marriage to mean something. So you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone I know. I decided to tell the truth. What people did with that information was their choice. She stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of the perfume she used to wear on special occasions, back when I was the one she dressed up for. You destroyed me, Mark. My business, my reputation, my friendships, everything I worked for. No, I said quietly. You destroyed these things when you started lying. I just turned on the lights. The metaphor hung between us like a verdict. She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to deflate instead. I did love you, she whispered. Once. For a long time. I loved you too. For 18 years. But you loved the excitement more than you loved us. It wasn't about love with him. It was about feeling alive again. Then you got your excitement. Now you live with the outcome. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in Judge Morrison's courtroom. David Brennan had negotiated exactly what he'd promised. I kept the house, received 50% of what remained of Bliss and Bloom's value after Tina was forced to sell, and got primary custody of Cody. Rex Dalton had vanished like smoke, leaving behind a trail of unpaid debts and unanswered court summons. Word was he'd moved to Idaho, though nobody seemed to know for sure. His garage sat empty behind its chain-link fence, weeds growing through cracks in the oil-stained concrete. Tina now worked part-time at Hair Today, a strip mall salon 20 minutes outside town. From business owner to employee, from local success story to cautionary tale, the fall had been swift and complete. I kept the slideshow files on a hard drive labeled Justice Archive, stored in my desk drawer next to insurance forms and tax documents. I never opened it again. Didn't need to. The evidence had served its purpose. I'd started taking evening classes at the community college, exploring a possible transition into forensic accounting. Turns out, skills in detecting fraud were transferable, and there was something satisfying about the idea of helping other people find truth in the wreckage of broken trust. My old college roommate had reached out, invited me for coffee that turned into dinner, that turned into something that felt like the beginning of a different kind of story. Sarah was divorced too, understood the particular exhaustion that comes from rebuilding your life from evidence and legal documents. On a Saturday afternoon in early spring, Cody stopped by the house. Our house now, legally and practically. He was packing for college, sorting through 18 years of accumulated childhood in boxes marked Keep, Donate, and Trash. Dad, he said, holding up a framed photo of our family from some long-ago vacation. Do you ever regret how you handled it? I considered the question while watching him tape up a box of old textbooks. Cody was heading to engineering school in the fall, full scholarship. The kind of kid who solved problems methodically and believed in the power of documentation. Maybe he'd inherited that from me. Some parts, yes, I answered honestly. But I'd regret silence more. Was it justice? It wasn't revenge, Cody. It was clarity. Sometimes that's the best kind of justice. He nodded, understanding in the way that 18-year-olds do when they're trying to figure out what kind of adult they want to become. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Tina had stirred spaghetti sauce and lied about her brake problems, and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank document as I considered how to tell this story, how to explain the choice between dignity and truth, between quiet suffering and public accountability. I typed, full disclosure, a case study in marriage, infidelity, and evidence. Some men storm out, some men break down, I documented. Not because I'm vengeful, but because I knew no one would believe the story unless I told it perfectly. I wasn't interested in being the better man. I was interested in being the honest one. Outside my window, Bridger Falls settled into evening quiet. Streetlights flickered on, illuminating the suburban landscape where normal people lived, normal lives, making normal mistakes that didn't require slideshow presentations or legal proceedings. The war was over. I'd won if winning meant living alone in a house full of memories, eating dinner for one while my ex-wife cut hair for minimum wage, and my son prepared for a life that would hopefully be less complicated than the one his parents had built and destroyed. But I could sleep at night. I could look at myself in the mirror. I could tell my son, when he asked, that I'd chosen truth over comfort, disclosure over denial. In the end, that had to be enough. I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and went to bed in the house I'd fought to keep, in the life I'd chosen to rebuild from the ashes of the one that had been built on lies. The story was finished. The evidence filed away. The case closed.